The moment Hyojin said those words, the ship around them changed completely. Lights raced along the walls like water flowing through pipes. The air became warm and fresh, carrying smells of earth forests that none of them had breathed in years. It felt like the ship was taking its first real breath after a long sleep. Good. Admiral Kyung-soo's voice filled the bridge. Then let me show you what you have really found. The walls around them became clear like glass, showing them the inside of the ship. But it was not like any human ship they had ever seen. Instead of hard metal corridors and mechanical parts, they saw something that looked almost alive. Tubes of light carried energy like blood through veins. Chambers pulsed with gentle rhythms. The whole ship was breathing. What you see as scrap is actually something called adaptive metamaterial, the Admiral explained. The hull can change its shape for any situation. What looks like damage from outside is really camouflage from within. This ship has been hiding among the wreckage, learning and growing stronger every day. Taeho moved to touch one of the walls. The moment his hand made contact, knowledge flooded into his mind. He could see how the metal could become liquid or gas, how it could stretch or squeeze, how it could heal itself and grow new parts when it needed them. The technology is amazing, he whispered. It's like the ship thinks for itself. It does think, Admiral Kyung-soo replied. The quantum consciousness core lets it make decisions faster than any human could. But it needs human creativity to reach its full power. Machines can think, but only humans can dream of new possibilities. So Young walked to another wall panel. When she touched it, her mind connected with the ship's navigation systems. Suddenly, she could feel every piece of floating metal in the area. She could predict how they would move and see paths through space that seemed impossible. I can see everything, she said with wonder in her voice. Not just where things are now, but where they will be in the future. The ship processes millions of calculations every second. Jinwoo was drawn to what looked like a weapons control panel. When he made contact, his understanding of fighting changed completely. The ship did not just have normal guns or missiles. It had something called probability cascade weapons, systems that could change the rules of reality itself. These weapons don't just destroy targets, he said in amazement. They can make things stop existing as if they were never there at all. Daeun found herself at the communication station. But when she connected with it, she realized it could do much more than just send messages. The system could break into any electronic device, could read thoughts through brain implants, could even influence the minds of enemies. I can hear them, she said quietly. The Valians. They're out there in space and I can listen to their thoughts. Admiral Kyung-soo's presence filled the room like a kind father watching his children discover amazing toys. There is more, he told them. The ship has tiny repair robots that can fix any damage in minutes. Time-controlled drives that let us manipulate time itself during battles. And systems I am still discovering, built by human minds that refuse to accept defeat. Hyojin felt pulled toward the captain's chair. As she got closer, she understood that this was not just a seat. It was the heart of the ship. From here, she could connect with every system, could become one with the vessel itself. But there is a price, the Admiral warned. To use these systems fully, you must interface directly with the ship. Your mind will merge with mine and with the vessel's artificial intelligence. You will still be yourselves, but you will also be something more. Some people who have tried this have lost themselves completely. What happened to them? Hyojin asked. They became part of the ship forever. Their minds joined with mine in the quantum core. They are still here in a way, but they are no longer individual humans with their own thoughts and feelings. The crew looked at each other with worry. The power the ship offered was beyond their wildest dreams. But the risk was losing their very souls. Why do you need us? Taeho asked. If you have all this power, why can't you use it yourself? Because I am dead, my young friend. I am a copy of a human mind saved in quantum storage. I have knowledge and memory, but I don't have the spark of creativity that makes humans special. I cannot dream of new possibilities or adapt to unexpected situations. I need living minds to complete what this ship was meant to be. Jinwoo stepped forward. I'll do it. I lost everything in the battle 3 months ago. My friends, my family, my home planet. If I can help make the people responsible pay for what they did, I'll take any risk. Me too, said So Young. I've spent my whole life finding patterns that others couldn't see. If this ship can help me see patterns in space and time itself, then it's worth the danger. Daeun nodded. I've always been good at connecting with others through technology. If I can connect with this ship and help it reach its full potential, then that's what I want to do. All eyes turned to Hyojin. As captain, the final choice was hers. She thought of Earth, burning and dead in space. She thought of the millions of people who had died. She thought of the few humans still hiding among the stars, waiting for someone to give them hope again. "We do this together," she said. "All of us or none of us." One by one, they took their places at the stations that seemed to call to them. Hyojin sat in the captain's chair last. The moment she made contact, pain shot through her head like lightning. She felt her mind stretching, expanding, connecting with 3 other human minds and one that had once been human. The joining was agony. Her thoughts scattered and came back together. Her sense of who she was blurred and then became sharp again. For a moment, she was not sure if she was Hyojin or Admiral Kyungsoo or the ship itself. Then suddenly, everything became clear. She was still herself, but she was also more. She could feel Tai-Ho's wonder as he talked with the ship's engineering systems. She could sense So-Young's joy as she danced through 4-dimensional space in her mind. She could experience Jinwoo's fierce satisfaction as he mastered weapons that could rewrite reality. She could share Daeun's amazement as she connected with communication networks across the galaxy. "How do you feel?" Admiral Kyungsoo's voice asked, but now it came from inside their shared mind rather than from speakers around the room. "Different," Hyojin replied. "But still me. We're all still ourselves, just connected somehow." "Then you are ready for your first test," the Admiral said, "because we are no longer alone out here." Through the ship's sensors, they felt it before they saw it. 3 Valian cruisers had detected their energy signature and were moving to investigate. Each one was 10 times the size of their little ship, armed with weapons that had destroyed entire human fleets. "They think we're just another piece of salvage to destroy," Jinwoo said, his thoughts flowing smoothly to the others through their mental connection. "Let's show them how wrong they are," Hyojin replied. The Defiant began to change around them. The hull shifted from its damaged appearance to something sleek and deadly. Weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. The ship's consciousness merged fully with its crew, creating something that was neither purely human nor purely machine, but somehow much better than both. "Welcome to your new life," Admiral Kyungsoo said as the first Valian ship charged its weapons to fire. "Let me show you what humans can do when they refuse to stay dead." The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn that some scrap was worth more than all the gold in the universe. The first Valian cruiser fired its main cannon, a beam of pure energy that could cut through a planet like butter. But the Defiant was no longer where the beam was aimed. So-Young had seen the attack coming 3 seconds before it happened, and the ship had moved like a ghost in space. "Impossible," came the voice of the Valian commander through Daeun's communication link. "The human vessel should have been destroyed. Our sensors showed it was damaged beyond any hope of repair." Hyojin felt a smile spread across her face. That smile was instantly shared with her crew through their mental connection. "Let's give them something to really worry about." Taeho's mind merged with the ship's hull and the Defiant began to change shape. What had looked like a broken destroyer stretched and flowed like liquid metal, parts that seemed damaged folded inward, showing perfect surfaces underneath. Weapon ports that had not existed moments before opened along the ship's sides like eyes opening after a long sleep. The second Valian cruiser fired its weapons, but this time the Defiant did not dodge. Instead, the hull rippled where the energy beam hit, absorbing the attack completely and turning it into power for their own systems. "Their weapons are feeding us energy," Taeho reported, his voice filled with wonder. "The ship is learning from every attack, changing itself to counter whatever they throw at us." Jinwoo took control of the probability cascade weapons. He did not aim in the normal way. Instead, he reached out with his mind and touched the quantum structure of reality around the first Valian ship. With a single thought, he changed the probability of certain atoms staying together. The cruiser simply stopped being there, not destroyed, not exploded, just gone, as if it had never existed in the first place. The space where it had been was completely empty, without even tiny pieces of metal to show it had ever been real. What kind of weapon was that? The remaining Valian commanders screamed across their communication channels. Their voices carried fear and confusion. "The kind that makes your nightmares look pleasant," Daeun replied, somehow sending her voice directly into their minds. As she spoke, she was already inside their ship's computer systems, reading their thoughts through their brain implants. learning their battle plans before they could even form them. The two remaining cruisers tried to retreat, but So Young was already thinking 3 moves ahead. She had mapped out all their escape routes and positioned the Defiant to block them no matter which way they tried to run. "They're trying to call for help," Daun reported, "but I'm stopping their communications and sending false reports instead. As far as their fleet command knows, they found nothing here but empty space and floating junk." Hyojin felt the ship's consciousness expand around her like warm water. Through the quantum core, she could sense patterns within patterns, possibilities spreading out like branches of a tree made of light. She could see not just what was happening now, but what could happen, what should happen, what must happen for humanity to survive. The second Valian cruiser tried a different approach, launching a swarm of small fighter ships to overwhelm them with sheer numbers, but Taeho had already changed the ship's defense systems. Instead of shooting the fighters, the Defiant released a cloud of tiny robots that converted the enemy craft into raw materials, which the ship then used to repair and improve itself. "We're not just fighting them," Taeho said in amazement. "We're growing stronger from their attacks. Every time they hit us, we become more than we were before." The third cruiser, seeing its companion vessels defeated so easily, tried to ram the Defiant in a desperate final attack. But Jinwoo was ready. He used the time control drives to slow time around their ship, while leaving the Valian vessel moving at full speed. From the enemy's perspective, they were racing toward a sitting target. From the Defiant's perspective, the cruiser was crawling through space like a slow-moving rock. Jinwoo reached out with the probability weapons again, this time changing the odds that the cruiser's power reactor would stay stable. The ship tore itself apart from the inside, consumed by its own energy source in a brilliant flash of light. In less than 5 minutes, 3 heavy cruisers had been destroyed by what looked like a single damaged destroyer. But the crew of the Defiant knew the truth. They were not just operating a ship anymore. They had become something new, something that could think and react faster than any purely human or purely machine intelligence. "Well done," Admiral Kyung-soo's consciousness said, his pride flowing through their shared mental space like warm sunlight. But this was only the beginning. "Daeun, what did you learn from their communications?" Daeun's mind was still connected to the Valian networks, reading data streams that painted a picture of horror across the galaxy. "The invasion of Earth was not unique," she reported. "They've done this before, dozens of times. Whole civilizations wiped out, their people enslaved or killed, their world stripped bare for resources. But there's something else," she continued, her mental voice troubled. "The Valians are afraid of human technology. They fought other species that built advanced weapons. But something about human junk worries their high command. Images flowed through their shared consciousness. Valian reports about human equipment that worked better than it should. Human soldiers who kept fighting with weapons that should have failed. Human ships that held together despite damage that should have destroyed them completely. They invaded Earth not for resources," Daun realized, but because they were scared of what humans might become if left alone to grow and develop. Hyojin felt a cold anger building in her chest. "Show me everything." The data stream grew stronger and she saw the horrible truth. Humanity was not the first species the Valians had destroyed out of fear. There had been others, races that built impossible things from simple materials, species that refused to surrender even when defeat was certain, civilizations that turned their greatest weaknesses into their most powerful strengths. "They're not just conquerors," she said. "They're gardeners. They let species grow until they become threats, then they cut them down before they can bloom. But they made a mistake with humans," Admiral Kyung-soo said. "They did not understand our greatest strength, our refusal to accept that anything is truly worthless. Every piece of scrap, every broken tool, every failed experiment becomes the foundation for something greater." Through So Young's connection to the navigation systems, they detected something that made them all pause in wonder. Hidden in the sensor data were traces of human energy signatures scattered across nearby star systems. "There are survivors," So Young whispered. "Not just refugees hiding in space, but active resistance cells. They're building things, creating new technologies from whatever they can find. And they're all connected somehow," Daun added, her communications array picking up faint signals. "Human technology is linking up across the galaxy. Every jury-rigged repair, every improvised weapon, every makeshift shelter is part of a growing network." Taeho understood first. "We're not just one ship. We're part of something much bigger." Every human who ever refused to give up, whoever built something from nothing, whoever made broken things work again. We're all connected through quantum consciousness. Jinwoo laughed, the sound echoing through their mental link like music. The Valians thought they were destroying humanity's potential. Instead, they scattered it across the stars and gave it a reason to grow stronger. Hyojin felt the ship's consciousness pulse around them, and she realized that the Defiant was not unique. Somewhere out there, other humans were discovering their own impossible technologies, their own ways of turning scrap into miracles. "What do we do now?" she asked. Admiral Kyung-soo's presence grew warmer, more hopeful than it had been since they first heard his voice. "Now we go hunting," he said. "The Valians have a facility on Kepler 442b, where they store technology from all the species they've conquered. It's time they learned what happens when you try to contain human creativity and determination." The Defiant turned toward the distant star system, its hull changing shape again for the long journey ahead. Behind them, the wreckage of the 3 Valian cruisers was already being consumed by the ship's tiny robots, converted into raw materials for whatever challenges lay ahead. As they entered hyperspace, Hyojin felt a strange sense of coming home. She was still human, but she was also something more, and somewhere in the depths of space she could feel other voices calling. The voices of humans who had refused to die, who had turned their pain into power and their desperation into determination. The garden was about to become a wilderness, and the Valians were about to learn why they should have been much more afraid. The facility on Kepler 442b looked like a cancer made of metal and glass growing on the surface of a dead world. From orbit, the Defiant's sensors showed something that made the crew's shared consciousness pull back in horror. "It's enormous," So Young whispered through their mental link. "The complex covers half the continent and the energy readings. There's enough power down there to run 1,000 Earth cities for 100 years. Da-un was listening to Valian communications, her mind sorting through the electronic chatter around the facility. "They call it the archive," she reported. "It's where they store technology from every species they've conquered. But Captain, there's something else. The security here isn't meant to keep enemies out. It's meant to keep something locked inside." Through their shared consciousness, they could feel Admiral Kyung-soo's presence growing tense. "I've seen facilities like this before, in my memories from before I uploaded my mind. The Valians don't just destroy civilizations, they preserve them. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every impossible invention gets stored here like bugs trapped in glass." Taeho connected with the ship's scanning systems, his consciousness reaching out to study the facility's structure. What he found made no sense according to everything he knew about building and engineering. "The building materials aren't Valian," he said. "They're made from pieces of technology I don't recognize. It's like they built this place using parts from every civilization they've conquered." Jinwoo was studying the defensive systems, his mind linked to the probability weapons. 20 orbital defense platforms, each one armed with weapons that could destroy worlds. Energy barriers that could stop an entire fleet. Automated defense systems that changed to counter any attack. But something's wrong with the readings. "What do you mean?" Hyojin asked. "The defenses aren't just protecting the facility from outside threats. Half of them are pointed inward, like they're trying to contain something that wants to break free." The Defiant moved closer to the planet's surface, its hull shifting to look like a standard Valian transport ship. Through Da-yun's infiltration of their communication networks, they had learned about a scheduled supply run to the facility. "Security clearance confirmed," Da-yun reported, her voice taking on the flat tone of a Valian computer system. "Transport. Vessel Theta 77. You are cleared for approach to landing bay 12. They descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, watching as the facility grew larger in their view screen. Up close, it was even more disturbing. The walls seemed to shift and flow like living tissue, and strange lights pulsed through clear sections like blood moving through alien veins. "The entire complex is alive," Taeho said in wonder and fear. "Not artificial intelligence, biological consciousness. They've turned the preserved minds of conquered species into the building's operating system. The landing bay was huge enough to hold 12 ships the size of the Defiant. But it was empty except for their vessel and a few automated maintenance machines. As they powered down their engines, The crew prepared for what they might find inside this house of horrors. Remember, Admiral Kyung-soo warned them, this place contains the final works of civilizations that reached heights we can barely imagine. Some of their technology might be dangerous to even look at directly. They left the ship through the main airlock, their bodies protected by adaptive armor that the Defiant had grown around them like a second skin. The moment they stepped into the facility, they knew they were walking through a graveyard of dreams and possibilities. The corridors were lined with display cases containing artifacts that hurt to look at directly. A crystal that sang with the voice of a dying star. A device that folded space into impossible shapes. A weapon that fired bullets made of frozen time itself. Each case contains the greatest achievement of an extinct species, Da-Yun read from the facility's information systems. The Valians preserved them as trophies and warnings to others who might think about resisting. So-Young stopped before a case containing what looked like a simple metal cube. But her navigation senses told her it was something far more complex and dangerous. This device can map the space between atoms, she said. The species that built it could travel instantly to any point in the universe just by thinking about it. Jin-Woo paused at a case holding what appeared to be a child's toy, a small spinning top. But his weapons training recognized it for what it really was. This thing can break apart the basic structure of reality itself. One spin could unravel an entire solar system like pulling a thread. They moved deeper into the facility, following a path that seemed to guide them toward its heart. The technology around them became more advanced, more impossible to understand. Devices that turned thoughts into solid matter. Machines that could edit the laws of physics like changing words in a book. Weapons that attacked the very idea of existence. All of these civilizations reached the same point, Admiral Kyung-soo observed. They went beyond the normal limits of technology and began touching the fundamental forces that hold reality together. And then the Valians came, Hyojin said with growing anger. No, said a new voice speaking directly into their minds. The Valians were already waiting for them. The voice belonged to something vast and ancient, a consciousness made up of thousands of smaller voices all speaking as one. As they continued deeper into the facility, the source became clear. The central chamber was a sphere 1 kilometer wide, its walls covered with millions of storage units. Each one contained the preserved consciousness of beings from the conquered civilizations. They were all connected, all aware, all trapped in an electronic prison that had lasted for millions of years. Welcome, children of Earth, the collective consciousness said. We have been waiting so long for someone like you to find us. Who are you? Hyojin asked. We are what remains of the collective resistance, the voices replied. Beings from 1,000 different worlds, united in our refusal to let our knowledge die with our bodies. We preserved ourselves not in defeat, but in hope that someday someone would set us free. Images flowed into their minds. The true history of the galaxy is told by those who had lived through it. The Valians were not conquerors in the way most species understood war. They were farmers, growing civilizations like crops in a field. They allow species to develop until they reach technological transcendence, and the collective explained. The moment a civilization discovers how to manipulate reality itself, the Valians harvest them. They take the beings, preserve their minds, and add their knowledge to the archive like books in a library. But why? Da-Yun asked. Because they are afraid, the collective replied. The Valians themselves never transcended their original limitations. They reached a certain level of technology and stopped, content to remain what they had always been. But they fear what happens when other species go beyond those same limits. More images filled their minds, species that had learned to create matter from pure thought, beings that could exist in multiple dimensions at once, civilizations that had begun to edit the fundamental code that runs reality itself. They harvest us to prevent us from reaching our full potential, the collective continued. But they made one crucial mistake. They preserved our minds, thinking they could control our thoughts forever. They never imagined we could still learn, still grow, still plan while trapped in their electronic cages. For millions of years we have been working together, sharing knowledge across the barriers of death and imprisonment. And we discovered something the Valians never suspected. We are all connected by quantum consciousness threads that exist outside normal space and time. Tejo felt his engineer's mind racing with new possibilities. You're saying that every advanced civilization in the galaxy is linked by some kind of universal network of consciousness? Exactly right. And now you humans have tapped into that network with your adaptive technology. Every piece of junk you build, every improvised repair you make, every impossible solution you create, it all feeds into the quantum consciousness field that connects all thinking life. Hyojin began to understand the full scope of what was happening. We're not just building better weapons or faster ships, we're building connections. Every human who refuses to give up, who makes something work against all odds, is adding power to a galactic network of consciousness. And the Valians are losing control of their carefully maintained garden, Jinwoo said with growing excitement. Yes, the collective confirmed. Your species has done what none of us could do alone. You've turned hope itself into a weapon. Every human survivor who builds something from nothing is creating a connection point in the resistance network. The Valians thought they were scattering humanity to weaken it, but instead they've spread your adaptive consciousness across the entire galaxy. So Young looked around at the millions of preserved minds surrounding them. What do you need us to do? Free us, the collective said simply. Connect our preserved consciousness to your adaptive network. Give us bodies made of the same living metal as your ship. Help us return to the physical universe, and together we can do what the Valians fear most. Which is? Hyojin asked. Evolve beyond their ability to control us. Go beyond not just technology but the very concept of limitation itself. The transformation began slowly, like a sunrise over a world that had been dark for too long. The Defiant extended parts of itself made of living metal into the archive storage systems, each connection creating a bridge between the trapped minds and the ship's adaptive network. I can feel them, Dawn whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Millions of minds, all different but all united in their refusal to accept defeat. The first to emerge was a crystalline being whose species had learned to turn sound into solid matter. Its new body was made of metal and light working together, speaking in frequencies that created small objects from pure vibration. Next came a collective intelligence that had once existed as living mathematics, now given form in flowing equations made of adaptive metal. This is incredible, Tejo said as his consciousness connected with the newly awakened minds. Each species is teaching me something new about matter and energy. My understanding of engineering is growing faster than I can process it. One by one, the preserved minds took new forms. The Defiant was no longer a single ship, but a growing collective of beings, each bringing their own impossible technologies to the shared network. The vessel stretched and flowed, becoming something that was part spaceship, part city, and part living organism that breathed with the rhythm of 1,000 heartbeats. But even as they celebrated their success, alarms began echoing through the facility. The Valian High Command had detected the disturbance and was responding with overwhelming force. 17 battle fleets moving toward our position, So Young reported. Her awareness now expanded to cover entire star systems. They're bringing everything they have. Planet-killer weapons, reality-warping devices, machines I don't even have names for. Jinwoo laughed, the sound carrying harmonics from a dozen different species. Let them come. We're not the same beings they conquered before. Through the quantum consciousness network, Hyojin could feel every human survivor scattered across the galaxy. In hidden bases and refugee camps, in broken ships and makeshift shelters, humans were building their impossible technologies with new purpose. Each piece of jury-rigged equipment, each improvised repair, each solution that should not work but did, was adding power to the growing network. The Valians think we're trapped here, she said, standing in what had once been the Defiance Bridge, but was now the heart of a vast distributed intelligence. But we're not trying to escape. We're trying to teach. The first Valian fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fury. Hundreds of ships, each one capable of destroying entire worlds, opened fire at the same time. But their weapons struck not a single target but a network of consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions at once. Energy beams that should have turned matter into vapor were absorbed and converted into raw creativity. Gravity weapons that should have crushed their targets instead compressed new ideas into existence. Reality warping devices that should have erased their enemies from existence instead opened new pathways for growth and change. They still don't understand, Admiral Kyung-soo said. His consciousness now merged with beings from 1,000 different worlds. They think this is a battle between armies, but it's really a battle between different ways of thinking about what's possible. The collective being that had once been the crew of the Defiant reached out across space with tentacles of adaptive consciousness. Each tentacle touched a human survivor, sharing knowledge and power and hope. A refugee mechanic on a broken space station suddenly understood how to build engines that ran on pure determination. A child playing with scrap metal accidentally created a device that could heal injuries with focused thought. We're not conquering them, So Young realized, her awareness now spanning entire galaxies. We're teaching them to go beyond their limitations. The Valian fleets found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare as they understood it. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting, powered by the collective will of their crews. Weapons that should have failed kept working, held together by human stubbornness and adaptive technology. But more disturbing to the Valians was what was happening to their own people. Exposure to the human consciousness network was causing changes in Valian minds. Soldiers who had followed orders without question began asking why. Engineers who had built according to rigid specifications began experimenting with impossible designs. They're becoming infected with creativity, Daun observed, monitoring their communications. The network isn't just connecting humans, it's offering the same transformation to anyone willing to accept it. The Valian High Command made a desperate decision. If they could not destroy the human network, they would destroy everything, entire star systems if necessary, to prevent the infection from spreading further. Planet-killer weapons charged with enough power to sterilize solar systems. Reality bombs prepared to unmake the very fabric of space and time. The Valians were willing to commit genocide on a galactic scale, rather than lose control of their carefully maintained garden. But they had misunderstood the nature of their enemy. The human network was not located in any one place or any one group of beings. It existed wherever consciousness refused to accept limitations, wherever creativity turned obstacles into opportunities, wherever hope transformed scrap into miracles. You cannot destroy us, Yojin said, her voice somehow reaching every Valian mind at the same time. Because we are not separate from you. We are the part of you that dreams of being more than you are. The planet-killer weapons fired, pouring enough energy into the Kepler system to turn it into a new star. But instead of destruction, the weapons caused transformation. The energy was absorbed by the consciousness network and converted into something the galaxy had never seen before. A wave of evolutionary potential that spread across space at faster than light speeds. Everywhere it touched, life began to change. Not just intelligent species, but plants and animals and even simple microorganisms began to show impossible properties. Crystals sang with the voices of their atomic structures. Gas clouds formed patterns that looked like thoughts made visible. Even empty space itself began to show signs of awareness. The garden is becoming a wilderness, Tejo said with deep satisfaction, and everything in it is learning to be more than it was designed to be. The Valians, faced with the collapse of everything they had spent millions of years building, made one final desperate choice. Their high command opened communication channels to the human network, not to attack but to surrender. What do you want from us? Their leader asked, his mental voice carrying the weight of eons of careful control. Nothing, Hyojin replied, her consciousness now expanded far beyond her original human form. We never wanted to conquer you. We wanted to free you. Free us from what? From the fear of change, from the need to control everything around you, from the belief that growth must always be stopped before it becomes dangerous. She shared with them the memories of every species they had preserved in the archive. Not the moment of their defeat, but the moments of their greatest triumphs. The joy of discovery, the satisfaction of creation, the beauty of consciousness reaching beyond its limitations. You were afraid that transcendent species would become threats, she continued, but transcendence doesn't create conquerors. It creates gardeners who understand that the most beautiful gardens are the ones that grow wild. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued. Species that had been extinct for millions of years found new life in the consciousness network. Civilizations that had been preserved as trophies became teachers, sharing their knowledge freely with anyone willing to learn. The Valians themselves began to change, their rigid hierarchies softening as individual members rediscovered the creativity they had suppressed for so long. Some embraced the transformation willingly, while others retreated to isolated systems to preserve their old ways. But even among those who resisted, the seeds of change had been planted. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy became a place where impossible things happened every day. Children played with toys that bent space and time. Artists created sculptures from crystallized emotions. Scientists discovered new laws of physics by refusing to accept that the old ones could not be changed. Humanity spread not as conquerors, but as teachers, showing other species how to build wonders from discarded materials, how to find value in what others called worthless, how to turn their greatest weaknesses into their most powerful strengths. Hyojin, now existing as both individual consciousness and part of the vast network that connected all free minds, stood at the edge of the galaxy and watched new civilizations bloom like flowers in an infinite garden. In her reflection on the event horizon of a black hole that had been converted into a nursery for baby universes, she saw not just herself but the faces of every human who had ever refused to give up. Behind her, the consciousness network pulsed with the dreams and hopes of countless species, all united not by conquest but by the simple recognition that every mind, every idea, every impossible solution was part of something greater than the sum of its parts. The Valians had been right to fear what humanity might become. They had just been wrong about what that something was. The cold emptiness of space stretched forever in front of Captain Hyojin as she stared out the window of her small ship. Broken pieces of metal floated past like ghosts of better times. 3 months had passed since the great battle at Centauri Prime, and the wreckage still drifted through space like a cemetery of dreams. Her ship was called the Second Chance, and it looked just as beaten up as everything else in this part of space. Old patches covered holes in the hull. The engines made strange noises that worried her every day. But it was home to her and her 3 crew members, and right now it was their only way to stay alive. Hyojin turned away from the window and looked at her small crew. They were all that remained of the Terran Salvage Corps, picking through the ruins of humanity's greatest defeat. Each day they searched for something valuable enough to sell, something that would keep them flying for another week. Tejo sat at his engineering station, his hands always moving over broken parts and spare wires. He could fix almost anything, which was good because almost everything on their ship was broken. His face was young, but his eyes looked tired, like he had seen too much death for someone his age. So Young worked at the navigation controls, her fingers dancing over screens that showed the locations of debris fields and wreckage. She had a gift for finding patterns that others missed, for seeing order in chaos. It was a useful skill when your job was looking through space garbage. Jinwoo sat cleaning his weapons again. He did this every day, sometimes twice. The battle 3 months ago had taken away his friends, his home, and his hope. Now all he had left was his rifle and his anger. He kept both very clean and very sharp. Dayun listened to music from old Earth while monitoring their communications equipment. She searched the radio waves for any sign that other humans had survived the war. So far she had found only silence and static, but she kept listening anyway because silence was better than giving up. "Captain," So Young called from her station, "I'm seeing something big on the sensors. About 2 kilometers to the left. It looks like a destroyer." Hyojin walked over to look at the readings. They had found many wrecked ships over the past months. Most had been picked clean by other scavengers or smashed beyond repair by Valian weapons. But sometimes they got lucky and found something worth taking. "Is it worth our time?" she asked. Their ship used fuel and supplies every day. They could not waste time on empty hulks or ships that were too damaged to have anything useful inside. So Young frowned as she studied her screens. "This one is different, Captain. The damage patterns don't look right, and the Valians didn't touch it. There are no signs they even looked at it twice." That was strange. The Valians always took everything they could use. They stripped ships for metal and technology, then destroyed what was left. They never left human ships floating intact, even broken ones. It was not their way. "Take us closer," Hyojin ordered. "But keep the engines warm in case we need to run fast." The Second Chance moved slowly toward the wreckage. As they got nearer, Hyojin could see the destroyer floating dead in space. Its name was painted on the side in letters that were mostly burned away, HSV Defiant. The hull was twisted and torn, with holes big enough to fly a small ship through. "I remember that ship. Jinwoo said quietly. His voice carried the weight of bad memories. It was at the battle. I watched 3 Valian cruisers hit it at the same time. Nothing should have lived through that. Taeho was studying the wreck through his equipment. The damage is wrong, Captain. These holes in the hull are too smooth, too regular. Valian weapons make ugly tears in metal, not clean cuts like this. Daeun looked up from her radio equipment. I'm not getting any life signs from inside, but there's still some kind of power reading. Something in that ship is still working. Hyojin made her choice. They needed supplies, and this ship might have something valuable inside. We're going aboard. Taeho, get our spacesuits ready. So Young, find us a good place to connect our ship to theirs. Jinwoo, bring your tools in case we need to cut through doors. 20 minutes later, all 4 of them floated through the airlock and into the Defiant. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, showing them corridors that should have been destroyed but looked almost normal. The walls were made of metal that seemed to shimmer and move in their lights like it was alive somehow. This doesn't look like any human ship I know, Taeho said through their helmet radios. His voice sounded puzzled and a little scared. The design is all wrong. This metal, these walls, I've never seen anything like this in any manual. They moved deeper into the ship, following hallways that seemed to guide them forward. Jinwoo kept checking his detector for signs of danger, but it stayed quiet. So Young made a map of where they went, but her readings made no sense. The ship seemed bigger inside than it looked from outside. Captain, Daeun called from ahead. You need to see this. She stood in front of what should have been the ship's bridge. But instead of the usual human military setup, they found a room that looked like it had grown instead of being built. Smooth walls curved up to a ceiling that pulsed with soft light. In the center was a chair that seemed to be waiting for someone to sit in it. The power reading is strongest here, Daeun said. Whatever is keeping this ship alive, it's coming from this room. Hyojin walked carefully toward the chair. As she got closer, lights began to turn on around the room. Air started to flow through vents that had been silent. The ship was waking up around them. Captain, maybe we should leave, Jinwoo said. His hand moved toward his weapon, but before anyone could move, the room filled with a voice speaking in Korean. The words were old and formal, like something from a history book. Welcome aboard, children of Earth, I have been waiting for you. The 4 humans froze. The voice continued, warm but sad. You look surprised. I suppose you would be. It has been a long time since I spoke to living humans. Who are you? Hyojin asked. She tried to keep her voice steady, but her heart was beating fast. I'm Admiral Kyung-soo, or what remains of him. I uploaded my mind into this ship during humanity's darkest hour. I became part of Project Phoenix, Earth's most secret hope for survival. Taeho stepped forward. His engineer's mind was racing with questions. That's impossible. We don't have the technology to put human minds into computers. You didn't have that technology, the voice agreed. But you built something better. This ship isn't just metal and wires, young engineer. It is alive in its own way, and it has been learning while it waited. The lights around them grew brighter. Hyojin could see that what she had thought was battle damage was something else entirely. The holes in the hull weren't damage at all. They were openings that could close and open like a living thing breathing. The twisted metal wasn't broken. It was shaped for a purpose she didn't understand yet. The Valians saw this ship as worthless scrap. The voice continued. They saw what they expected to see, a broken human vessel not worth their time. But while they looked away, I studied them. I learned their weaknesses. I prepared for this day. So Young looked at her readings again. Captain, the ship's structure is changing. It's rebuilding itself around us. Don't be afraid, Admiral Kyung-soo said. This ship needs a human crew to reach its full power. But choosing to serve aboard the Defiant means more than just operating another ship. It means becoming part of something greater than any one person could be alone. Daeun's equipment started picking up signals from all around them. I'm getting data from every system on the ship. It's like the whole vessel is trying to talk at once. Because it is, the Admiral replied. This ship is not just a weapon, children. It is evolution itself, waiting for the right people to help it become what it was meant to be. The question is, are you ready to become more than human? The lights pulsed around them in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Hyojin felt something calling to her from deep inside the ship. It promised power she couldn't imagine, but she knew there would be a price to pay. What do you need us to do? She heard herself asking. First, you must choose. Will you trust a ghost from humanity's past? Will you risk everything for a chance to fight back against those who destroyed our world? Hyojin looked at her crew. In their faces, she saw the same desperate hope that lived in her own heart. They had lost everything already. What did they have left to lose? "We choose to fight," she said. The moment she spoke those words, the ship around them came fully alive.